What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my fantasy football starts and sits for NFL Week 5.
Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over the quarterback position and give you my 2019 fantasy football starts and sits for NFL Week 5. This should help you decide who you want to start in your season-long fantasy football leagues. And we will show you how to use the Draft Dashboard tools to dominate your season-long fantasy leagues. You can find waiver wire targets, get player point projections, find the best positional matchups to see who is projected to score the most fantasy points this week. These tools will help you decide what players to start in your fantasy football leagues. We have it all right here, so let's get into it. Okay guys, Week 5 fantasy football quarterback starts. I'm starting Tom Brady versus the Washington Redskins, who have the third worst defense overall, and they give up the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Tom Brady has averaged 18.8 fantasy points so far this season. He had a bad game last game. He only scored 5 fantasy points. So he's in a great bounce back spot versus a weak Washington defense that gives up the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Vegas thinks there's going to be 44.5 points scored in this game, and the New England Patriots are favored to win by 15.5. So Tom Brady should be a big part of that fantasy production. He's going to be looking to redeem himself after a bad Week 4 performance versus a tough Buffalo defense. He should have no problem doing just that here in Week 5 versus the Washington Redskins. The next guy I'm starting is Jared Goff from the LA Rams playing the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks do have the 10th best defense overall, but they give up the 15th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jared Goff is averaging 17.3 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 24 fantasy points last game, and we called it. We called the nice matchup that he had with Cooper Kupp, and although the matchup versus Seattle Seahawks isn't ideal, the Seattle Seahawks aren't as good as they used to be defending the passing game. Jared Goff has 3 star receivers in Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, and Cooper Kupp. Goff threw for over 500 yards last game, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 49 points scored in this game, and the Rams are only going to trail by 2, so it's going to be a competitive game. Goff's going to have to get his yards through the air. I think there's some Seattle matchups he can take advantage of, so I like Jared Goff here versus the Seattle Seahawks. This next QB start is probably going to surprise you, especially after that awful primetime performance on Monday Night Football. You're going to be saying, no, not Andy Dalton. But yes, I like Andy Dalton for the Cincinnati Bengals playing at home versus the Arizona Cardinals, who have the second worst defense overall and give up the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Andy Dalton is averaging 15.8 fantasy points per game on the season. Yes, he had an awful Monday night performance. He only scored 5 fantasy points in that game. He had so many opportunities, the game script was on his side, and he just couldn't get it done. He's not a good primetime player. But now, out of the lights, in a fantastic matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals, who are giving up the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, Andy Dalton has some nice offensive weapons in Tyler Boyd. Joe Mixon can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got capable wide receivers and pass catchers all around him. So it's a home game. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48.5 points scored in this game, and the Cincinnati Bengals are favored by 4.5 points. So they should do most of the scoring, and Andy Dalton's in a bounce back spot, so I like Andy Dalton here versus the Arizona Cardinals. So my next quarterback start is Kyler Murray from the Arizona Cardinals playing the Cincinnati Bengals. So I like both quarterbacks from this game. The Cincinnati Bengals are the 5th worst defense overall and give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Kyler Murray is averaging 19 fantasy points per game on the season. He's been nice and consistent through each game so far. He's averaging 4.5 rush attempts per game. He's definitely got rushing touchdown upside. He's projected at 18.7 fantasy points here in week 5. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48.5 points scored in this game, and they think the Cardinals are going to trail by 4.5. So this is a projected passing game script from Kyler Murray. He doesn't have the name brand behind him yet, but he's earning it every week with consistent production. He's got a soft matchup in the Cincinnati Bengals, so I like Kyler Murray here versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And another quarterback I think you should start this week if you got him is Jacoby Brissett from the Indianapolis Colts playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 8th worst defense overall and give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett is averaging 19.5 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 24 fantasy points last week. He's getting an average of 4.5 rushes per game, so he's got rushing touchdown upside. Vegas thinks there's going to be 57 points scored in this game, and they think the Colts are going to be trailing by 10.5 points. So this is a passing game script for Jacoby Brissett with a soft matchup versus the Kansas City defense that hasn't been able to stop anybody this year. Jacoby Brissett has been outperforming expectations. He didn't have T.Y. Hilton last week and still put up 24 fantasy points. So I like Jacoby Brissett here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Before I continue with the sits,
I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
And you guys are going to want to subscribe to this channel. It's totally free. All you have to do is tap that red subscribe button and ring that bell notification so you'll get notified of all of our new uploads. We're going to be doing season-long fantasy football videos every single day, so stop what you're doing, click that subscribe button, join the team, and get this free fantasy football content every single day. Okay guys, fantasy football, quarterback sits here in NFL Week 5. I'm going to sit Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns playing a tough San Francisco defense who has the 4th best defense overall and gives up the 9th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield has only averaged 14 fantasy points per game on the season. He's only rushing the ball an average of 1 time a game. He hasn't really been able to connect with Odell Beckham Jr. so far this season. Vegas thinks there's going to be 46.5 points scored in this game, and they think they're going to be trailing by 3.5 to the San Francisco 49ers. I think it's going to be tough sledding for Baker Mayfield, so I'm going to sit Baker Mayfield here in Week 5. Another guy I'm going to sit is Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 9th best defense overall and give up the 10th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Josh Allen has averaged 17.8 fantasy points per game on the season. He got beat up versus a tough New England defense last week, only scored 12 fantasy points. He's been rushing the ball 7.8 times per game, but the Tennessee Titans are good at stopping the run, and Vegas only thinks there's going to be 38.5 points scored in this game, so this one should be a low-scoring game. Not a lot of fantasy points for Josh Allen in this one, so I'm going to sit Josh Allen here versus the Tennessee Titans. Another quarterback I'm going to sit in Week 5 is Marcus Mariota. He had a good Week 4, scored 23 fantasy points. He's been averaging 19.1 fantasy points per game on the season. But now he's going up against that Buffalo defense that held the New England Patriots to only 16 points last week. They're the 2nd best defense overall, and they give up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. I think a lot of people are going to be chasing that big fantasy game he had last week, looking at the game log, seeing that it's a home game, and I think they're going to underestimate the Buffalo defense in the low game score total that Vegas has on this one. So I'm going to sit Marcus Mariota here in Week 5. Another guy I'm going to sit in Week 5 is Gardner Minshew from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Carolina Panthers, who have the 6th best defense overall, and they give up the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Gardner Minshew has averaged 17.4 fantasy points per game on the season. He's played pretty well. He gets about 3 rush attempts per game, but he's only projected to get 14 fantasy points here in week 5. And Vegas only thinks there's going to be 41 points scored in this game, with Jacksonville trailing by 3.5. This is a tough matchup for the newcomer. Could be a low-scoring affair. And Leonard Fournette got rolling last week, so I expect them to feed him the ball a lot this week. So I'm going to sit Gardner Minshew. And a guy who I liked last week, but I'm going to sit him here in week 5, is Derek Carr from the Oakland Raiders playing the Chicago Bears, who have the 3rd best defense overall, and they give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Derek Carr has only averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored his average 14 last week. He's getting 2 rush attempts per game, not as mobile as some of the other guys. And he's only projected at 14.3 fantasy points here in week 5. He's got a tough matchup versus the Bears. And Vegas only thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Raiders trailing by 4.5. Looks like Derek Carr got a little banged up. I think you gotta sit him here versus the Chicago Bears defense. So despite the emerging weapons that he has in Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs, Terrell Williams, I'm gonna sit Derek Carr here versus a tough Chicago defense.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL, MLB is still going, NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks.
Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite
player for NFL Week 5.
I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.
Do you want more fantasy football starts and sits for NFL Week 5? Check out the video linked right in the middle of the screen. Tap that video to continue getting more Week 5 fantasy football. Don't miss out on our free content. Hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second, means a lot to us. Thanks again, and thanks for watching.